Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and staying present through this full day of rich conversations. I want to start by asking all of you a question. Has anyone here ever felt I'm not good enough? Oh, thank you. Thank you. I thought I was the only one. Oh, wow. Lots of hands there. Nobody here? Okay. Lots of hands. Yes. Oh, thank God. I was going to think that I'd be the only one. Um, this feeling is something that visits most of us many times in our lives. I've faced this many times myself. I often work with young people in the therapy room who come talking about this feeling. So, this is something that I have studied, I have discussed, I have reflected upon, I have sat with for quite a while now. So, let me tell you that you're not alone. This thought comes to all of us quietly, repeatedly, especially in schools where there's a lot to measure up to, a grade or a score to hit or a language to speak in or a look to achieve, always a certain standard. Yeah. So let's think about, where does this feeling really come from? Let's imagine life as a video game, not one you chose to play though. The levels of this game were already set even before you knew you were playing. Right from childhood, we go through the levels of this game. Uh, Talk like this, stand like that, be like this, be part of a particular friend group, speak a language like that, wear those branded shoes, pick science over arts, or behave in a particular manner. Basically, perform, prove, perfect. Lots of standards to measure up to all the time. Now, let's think about how these standards come into our life. There's also another thing that is hidden about this game. Not everybody starts at the same place. There are some players who start at a harder level without being told why. It could be because of the color of their skin. It could be because of the language they speak at home. It could be because of who they pray to. It could be because of who they love. It could be because of what their bodies can or cannot do. So not only are we told to measure up in this game, we are also told that we all have to play the same game by the same rules. But that was never true to begin with. And then there is this invisible scoreboard that gets built around us. We start monitoring our progress and we start checking. There is this internal voice going, am I okay? Is that fine? That's not always self doubt. That's what's called modern power. I first came across the concept of modern power through the works of a French philosopher called Michel Foucault. He told us that power doesn't always come from rules and punishment. It can also come from what people begin to believe as true. So, and I practice narrative therapy, and Michael White, who was the one of the co-founders of narrative therapy, he used these concepts and applied them to the therapeutic context to show us that person is not the problem is the problem. By this, he meant that our social, cultural, and political context influences the problems we face in our life, and it also shapes our sense of self. So, as a narrative therapist, I don't only understand people through psychology, but I often ask them, what are some of the stories that the world has been telling you about yourself? And are those stories even true? So, when I say modern power, I mean this quiet force that works through shaping our sense of, what is normal, what is right, and what is true. It does so through things like education, science, media, culture, and what we see is on TV, what we see is celebrated. It tells us what is desirable, what is acceptable, what is the right thing. That shapes norms. And these norms then shape us. It doesn't operate by force. It makes you believe you want to do its bidding. It convinces you that the standards are natural, the pressure is personal, and that if you're struggling, it must be something about you and not the system. That's how it hides. This is important, so let's dig a little deeper into this. These standards of success, beauty, intelligence, coolness, they don't fall out of sky. They are not natural laws. They are constructed. They are created by all of us here. They are repeated. They are celebrated. And they show up everywhere, on the list of who's the topper in morning assembly, who's celebrated, who's on the magazine cover, who's an influencer on social media, what is trending there, what college did you go to, the cutoff of a college, etc., etc. It shows up in all these ways. At first, they look like facts, but really, they're messages. When we begin to see them enough times, we begin to internalize them. We absorb them, we stop questioning them. So I often meet children in the therapy room who will come in saying, I'm not confident enough, I'm not as focused as the others, I'm lazy, or basically, I'm the problem. So what they're doing is they're letting a narrow definition of fitting in create a sense of failure in them. This is what modern power does. It makes you believe that if you are struggling, it's your personal failure and it's nothing to do with the system. But what if it isn't true? What if it's the system that's failing us and not the other way around? And that's why it's so important to name these pressures. Because when we name them, we stop blaming ourselves. And when we stop blaming ourselves, we can begin to imagine other ways of being. However, there's always a time when we hear someone who's managed to meet these narrow norms. And then they reach that definition of success and they're celebrated. That takes us back into subscribing into these norms and standards and measuring up. Because these standards, they lure us into thinking, what if I just meet these standards? Can I shrug off this not good enoughness? Maybe then I'll finally belong. And sure enough, there are some checkpoints when you feel that it is possible to meet these standards and, I can do this. When you hit a certain grade, when you get a compliment, or when you have that Stanley Cup at school, or in any other form when you get validation, we begin to think that it is possible. But what happens? Is there ever a feeling of winning or completion? Maybe for a bit, but not for long, because the game keeps leveling up. The goalpost is always moving forward. Anybody remembers playing that game, Super Mario? I used to play that as a kid. Yeah. In that, there were Mario brothers. They were trying to save this princess. And every time you got closer to saving the princess, it told you, oh, wait, the princess is across another level behind another dragon. Please keep trying. It's really like that, these levels keep changing and we keep pushing ourselves to do better, to do more. And this is what modern power does. It not only enforces the game on us, it is constantly recalibrating it. And it does so through all of us. Yeah, whenever we try to compete, whenever we stay silent, or whenever we move closer to any goalpost, it'll push it away. And how do we all participate in the creation and shifting of these goalposts? Through comparison. We all use comparison so much in our lives. Comparison becomes our tracker, our compass in this game. Am I doing okay? Am I going all right? Have I got this okay? But what are we really doing? We're using somebody else's life as a map to navigate our own without really thinking, where does this pathway lead me to? Do I really want to go there? What do I truly value about? But let's go back again to what's really problematic. It has us convinced that measuring up depends on our personal performance and not the system that weighs us down. So when we collapse under the pressure of standards, we blame ourselves. That's how modern power succeeds. It turns our pain into proof that we are the problem. What if we pause this game? What if, instead of chasing hidden rules, we started asking better questions? Who created these levels? Do they really work for all of us? What do I really care about more than measuring up? Do I really want to save that princess? I've worked with many young people who have come to think they're not cool enough, not thin enough, not pretty enough, not achieving enough. And these ideas, what they do is they have them try various ways of measuring up or fitting in. But what do these methods do? They make them doubt themselves further. They slide them further into the notions of I'm not good enough. I remember this particular young boy I used to work with a few years ago. He was sent to therapy by school. He was 15 years old and he was facing bullying at school. But his response to bullying was crying. Now, he cried when people teased him relentlessly in class. So the teachers thought that's not an appropriate response for a 15-year-old boy. So they sent him to therapy to not be too sensitive, to toughen up like boys, and to prepare for the real world. He came into therapy all right, but he was not happy about it. He was furious. And very early on in one of the sessions, he asked me, imagine if you had a basket of apples. What would you do if there was one bad apple? Would you take that bad apple out of the basket? Or would you counsel all the other apples to toughen up? I have to be honest, I had nothing to say to him except agree that I don't think it would make any sense to put apples in therapy. He had flipped the whole thing by one question, and he was right. So then, instead of using therapy to make him less sensitive, we used therapy to figure out ways of how he could be more himself. That's refusing to measure up. Disrupting social standards is not being careless, it's being free. So you get to choose your relationship with these standards, how much I do, at what cost, and when, and which ones. It's refusing to let these narrow definitions of success and worth shrink our lives. And I think the first step towards that is empathy. Empathy is not pity. It's not rescuing someone. It's not trying to fix someone. It's not even trying to silver line their story. Empathy says, I hear your story. I see what you're carrying, and I'm not going to leave you alone with it. Empathy is refusing to rank myself and my friends. In narrative therapy, we have this idea of witnessing. When we listen to somebody standing beside them, not above, not behind, standing beside them, we listen with care, we listen with curiosity. This kind of listening makes space for a shared understanding. That shared understanding can lead to resonance. Now, what's the difference between resonance and empathy? Let's take a minute to understand that. Empathy is what I offer to other people, how I show up and listen to them without interrupting them, without judging them, without, trying to rescue them. Resonance is what happens inside me when I hear somebody's story and it stirs something in me. In narrative therapy, we have seen that when we listen closely to somebody's experience and then gently share with them in what ways their story has resonated with us, their story has shifted something inside us, that really helps a person feel truly held and seen. And not because, their story is perfect or polished. It's because their story has space to be held and seen, accepted. So empathy helps people speak. Resonance helps people feel less alone. Resonance can also, we can also understand it as when we hear somebody's story and we recognize it. It's something happens inside us. And not because the story is the same, but because the emotion is familiar. It's when I might say, same girl, same, but mean it not as competition, but connection. It could also be when you hear a song and you listen to a particular part and say, that's me. That's resonance. So empathy can break the shame around silence, and resonance can turn isolation into solidarity. And most importantly, resonance can help us remind us that we are not alone, even in our not enoughness. Modern power, as Foucault and White have taught us, it thrives when people feel personally responsible for their pain, when they believe they alone are struggling. But if we respond with resonance, we can begin to see the cracks in this game. It's not about me. We can't all be the problem, right? So it's not that we are weak, it's that the rules were never meant for all of us. And that's how something new can begin, a space for something else. Where we recognize that empathy and resonance aren't just soft skills, they're acts of refusal. Refusing to rank my friends and myself in this game, refusing to play this game. So, how do we build a society of empathy? Not by grand revolutions, but by small acts of refusals. Refusing to laugh when somebody is being mocked. Refusing to assume somebody's silence as they have nothing to say. Refusing to believe that a small idea of worth can shrink my life and that I have to earn my worth. And really slowing down to listening to somebody without interrupting them. Letting people finish their stories without trying to rescue them or judge them. And also being honest about our own rough edges, even if it means we have to post that not so perfect photo on social media. Maybe we can't fix the system overnight, but perhaps we just need to look around a bit more carefully to notice who's being measured unfairly, to notice when are we measuring ourselves too harshly. And when we do, what if instead of responding with shame or silence, we responded with empathy or resonance? I'd like to believe this is how a different kind of community begins. Not one built around fitting in, but one that holds space for people to show up as they are. A community where value isn't based on performance, it's not measured by performance, where you are not ranked but received. Empathy might not change the whole game, but it changes how we play. And my one big hope, that you stop asking, am I good enough? And start asking, who told me I wasn't? Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.